Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/usingyourpower. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Hi, thanks for joining us on Using Your Power. My name is Maveen, Kaura.
And I'm David Andrew Wiebe.
Hey, David, how's it going?
I'm powered up, man. How are you?
I thought we were going to try to switch it up.
Were we?
Yeah, I thought so last episode we said we were going to try.
You can say you're powered up too.
No, I don't want to say I'm powered up. I'm doing pretty well.
This is using your power, man. You got to be powered up.
I am powered up. There you go.
Our audience is going to hate you.
No, they're not.
Yeah, I know.
Are we going to keep this now because we're just ranting?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Awesome. So what is our topic today?
Today we're getting into market saturation, real or imagined. I'm sure this is something that's on a lot of people's minds as, oh yeah, well, it's too saturated. You shouldn't get into that and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's a lot of negativity out there. Although I am actually going to be arguing that there is market saturation, which will be fun.
So you're saying that market saturation is real, and I'm going to be arguing that market saturation is not real.
That's right.
Awesome. So why don't you start it off for it is real?
Okay. So my first point is, if it's a popular and profitable market, as some things tend to be, whether it's online, marketing and producing courses or producing ebooks or, creating videos on YouTube or soliciting people on Patreon, like many people will start joining in and then which will lead to a more crowded market than it originally was. Like it could be all be in the same niche. Sometimes it'll be real estate and sometimes it'll be like Forex investments and sometimes it'll be online courses in a particular niche, like such as social media. I mean, pretty soon, we see one person succeed and pretty soon all these other people are jumping in to join the ship.
Absolutely, and that's typically what happens, right? When people are succeeding, other people will jump in. So, but I would like you to think maybe a different way. As the world's population keeps increasing daily, more and more people are being born, and that means there's more and more opportunity either for people to sell to the people that are not quite online and at the age of starting a business. And keep in mind, there's also a lot of development happening in China and in India, two of the largest populations out there in the world right now. Well over, I'd probably say they probably got at least 3 billion people collectively added together. So there's a lot of opportunity to do business in China and India. So although it may seem like it's getting saturated, maybe in North America, there's still a huge overseas market to attack. And not attack in a negative way, not with bombs and stuff, because I think that's what's kind of happening in the world with Donald Trump, unfortunately. But I mean attack as in using your business strategy to grow.
Those are some great points, but it's actually even reflected in human behavior. I mean, think back to MySpace. Like, I don't know if you remember that, Mav, but like people were all on MySpace and they loved being on there and they made connections. And then Facebook came along and people said, yeah, MySpace is kind of okay, but I'm also creating a profile on MySpace. And at first it was like half and half. And then pretty soon it was like, yeah, I'm on Facebook. Forget MySpace. Screw it. I don't want to be on there anymore. So we see that happen all the time. It's like we can't just have two sites serving the same purpose necessarily, although there are different social media networks, so don't get me wrong, but people even call Google Plus a failure despite the fact that it still exists.
Right. I think the idea of having a business that's replaced by another business doesn't necessarily mean it's been saturated. I think if we look at the bell curve or the natural cycle of the way people buy products, typically at the starting on any business, if it's MySpace, some people would have started using it. As it got more popular, more and more people would have started using it. A lot more people would have got to it a lot faster, and then it would have kind of hit their plateau. And then as that plateau, either people would have caught kind of bored of it. Even Facebook's like that right now. I don't think that there's a market saturation because, like I said earlier, there's still more and more people being born every day. But it is probably hit a point where people are like, yeah, I'm not going to go on it as much as I used to. Or I'm not going to go on that 20 minutes a day that we talked about in the previous episode, where people are doing. But maybe that will, as you come down in that bell curve, something else typically replaces it. So although the market didn't get saturated, I think the people using that product may just get bored.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I think, Facebook does constantly reinvent itself, and that's maybe one of the reasons why it stuck around. It annoys a lot of people too, but maybe that's part of what keeps people engaged. Another interesting example from the music world, I mean, there's really you can only have so many of the same tribute band in the same region. You know, if you have 18 the Beatles tribute bands in your locality, I mean, somebody's going to get the gig, and it's probably not going to be the other 17 bands. And even if there's enough room for 2 or 3, I mean, how the heck do you make that happen? I mean, that's not a mistake that, you know, I would personally make, but maybe it's something that other people would do just because, hey, we love the Beatles and we want to start a tribute band too, and we've seen them succeed, so let's get the gig. And then, you know, pretty soon the gig is spread out over the best bands and just the best bands, but that might still be 5 or 6 or 7 out of those 18. So it gets crazy. You know, you can't have a single region cannot sustain that many tribute bands.
Well, I think that goes right back to what we were saying earlier, right, David? Where, you know, sure, in a free enterprise system, we can have as many people wanting to do whatever they want. So if they want to have, you know, 18 tribute bands for any particular, you know, say Beatles or Elvis or whoever, but you're right, only the best of the best will get those gigs, right? And the people who aren't getting the gigs, such as MySpace we were talking about compared to Facebook, you know, those people will be easily edging themselves out of the equation, and you know, then you're left maybe with 6 or 7 good bands, good quality bands, right, that can get the, you know, can be out there, provide the right services, provide the entertainment that they're giving the people, right? So I think that's one way to look at it as well. I think it's market cleaning out the market, not necessarily saturating the market.
Well, it still sucks for the band that wants to get all that money, right?
Right. Well, if you're not, you know, and just saying, if you're not as better than the best, you know, if you're gonna I think it goes back to, I forgot who said this, and I think it was Martin Luther King Jr., and I apologize if I got the quote wrong and the person wrong as well, but he said, you know, if you're going to sweep streets, then be the best at sweeping streets, right? So if you're going to be playing music, be the best. You know, if you're not the best, you might think, you know, a lot of people I think out there believe they are number one, and I think musicians especially, because it's such a craft that's so individual. I know this, we've talked about this before as well. People have such a connection to their own music, but if they're not everybody believes they're the best. I don't care if you're a painter, a musician, you know, whatever it is, right? You think you have the best skills, right? But the reality is there are many people that are continually going to be better than you, and there's more people being born today that will be better than you tomorrow, right? So I think just because of that alone is, if you're not, you know, getting better at your practice, you may want to look at it and reconsider what you're doing, because maybe although you are doing music, you might be better actually doing something else.
Which is similar to my next point. And, you know, this is that if customers feel their needs are adequately met and they don't feel the need to change in any way, you probably won't persuade them otherwise. And I think that's a similar thing that I'm dealing with the music entrepreneur, right? I mean, there's a lot of great content available out there. I mean, when I first started, there wasn't quite as much as what there's available now, which is good. I think it's good to see those kinds of changes. I think the second point is the biggest one. Like, if they don't feel the need to change and they just want to complain about the existing system, meanwhile they're not doing anything to make any difference or make any changes in their career that would help them and support them get to where they want to go.
Right, and this is why I believe market saturation is not real, because as we all know, the only constant in the world is change, right? So we know that. So one of the things I know for sure is there's new opportunities coming up every single day, and millions of people around the world are able to take advantage of those opportunities because of changing technology, not just the changes within self, but also everything that's changing within ourselves, or around us, sorry. So I know the more things keep changing, newer ideas are being developed, newer apps are being developed, stuff that we didn't even know about. You know, the iPod, for example, was just a concept when it first came out, you know, and it replaced and revolutionized the whole industry by replacing, you know, Discman and Walkmans and whatnot. So I think there's no such thing as saturation, because people will continually look for new ideas and build on those.
Well, but part of technology is enablement, right? It makes it so easy for anybody to start anything. You can start a business online with, you know, if you want to do e-commerce, you can easily set up a Shopify store. It's very easy to do. If you want to start an educational site where you're selling informational products, WordPress is great for that. If you want to get your podcast up and running, I mean, we use WordPress, but we publish it to iTunes too. So like everybody can get their podcast on iTunes just like we have. I mean, it's so much easier than it ever was. And if the barriers to entry are low, doesn't that mean that it's harder to stand out?
You're right. And the harder to stand outside, you're right. And that's why you have to make yourself different than everybody else, right? And I think that's why the market's not saturated, because you have as many opportunities as you want to be different as possible from everybody else out there, right? I know one of the things for sure, I know you kind of hit on this earlier with the ebooks, and there's more ebooks coming out every day because more people have more different experience that other people don't have, right? And that's why, although if you go to the bookstore, they're still writing books on sales and they're still writing books on relationships. Why? Do we need any more? Not really. So you're right. In that respect, maybe it is saturated. It is real. We don't really need it. But because more people have an experience that other people can relate to, we continue to put out more books and more videos and more courses because, just because you learn one way doesn't mean you're going to learn from a particular person. I may learn a different way and I may connect to somebody else, right? So if there's a lot more people out there finding new ways to connect to other people, they can definitely keep building on their market.
Great point. Do you have any other thoughts there, Mav?
I do have one last one. Excuse me. More and more people I think are turning, everyday purchases and services that they weren't able to buy because of technology and stuff. So I don't think there is a market saturation because new products keep coming out, things that people weren't able to buy. I know, for example, with us for right now, in 2017 we got we got an iPhone 7 right now out right now, and I think there's probably an iPhone 8 coming out very soon. But the cool thing is, there's people overseas in third world countries that don't even have access to this kind of technology. So even though there might be a saturation in North America with this product, the iPhone 7 will actually be brand new overseas in a third world country because they haven't had an opportunity to use it. So even because one market may become saturated, doesn't mean another market will be saturated in the same time.
But then are you admitting that it can become saturated in one market?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier, right? When things hit the bell curve, when it hits the top of the bell curve, it hits a peak. And that's when companies have to come up with new technology or, the technology they're kind of holding on their back end and release that new technology. So is it market saturation? Not necessarily, because even to this day, there's still people who don't have a TV, who refuse to buy one. There's people who never bought a VCR, never bought a tape player. And there's a lot of people who never bought a Discman or a Walkman or an iPod, or people still don't even have cell phones. So the market is still open to potentially reaching these people, but there are part of the market that's never going to buy products or services either.
Well, I think it's important for our listeners to hear both sides of the equation, and I think you just did, really good arguments for both sides. If market saturation is real or imagined, I think that's something for you to make up your mind about. But I think we've heard, both Mav and I, through network marketing and through other opportunities, that really, the opportunities are endless, and all we have to do oftentimes is just make a little tweak or make a little bit of a pivot in what we're doing to find success in what we're already doing. And so you might be inches away and just not even know it at times.
Right. And I'm going to kind of give a point on the other side of things, saying market saturation is real for a second. So,
sure.
One of the things I know more and more people are going out there and they're kind of sick of, the North American lifestyle. It's this go to work 9 to 5 and pay your bills and go home and do the same thing again, day after day, week after week, and more you're starting to see people are starting getting into, the Eastern kind of philosophy versus the Western philosophy. So I think the Eastern philosophy of life has kind of saturated itself, and more people are starting to look for alternative ways that they can live their lives, right? I think more of a way of getting back to the way things used to be without technology and stuff like that. So I know we just talked about the future of technology and smartphones, at least, on a previous episode, but I think more and more people are starting to want to kind of disconnect versus stay connected.
Yeah, I mean, to your point too, like Mexico's got that siesta, right? I mean, you take an hour-long nap or whatever it is you want to do during the hottest time of the day. So that's something that, they do to, as part of their culture. So the cultural thinking really changes a lot of things, even within North America.
Yeah, I agree. No,
yeah,
for sure. You're right. But you're right. And I think more and more people are starting to say, we can still, I think you made a point earlier that, you don't need $1 million to live. I think you were saying there's a number that most people can make in a year that satisfies their needs without causing too much stress and still allows them to be happy and pay all their bills and be fulfilled. Do you remember what that number was, David?
So that's not actually what it is. It's $70,000. And what it is people are no happier after earning that any amount greater than that.
Right.
So they're not measured.
Pay their bills and...
No, I mean, they're just not any measurably happier. There's no science or no evidence to suggest that you'll be a happier person because you're earning 100,000 versus 70,000.
Okay, so slightly different than I thought, but it kind of shows that most people could be happy at 70, or maybe just as miserable at 70, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. They could be.
So, but I think the more people, if they had $70,000 a year and then were able to control their time, I'm assuming you would agree with this too, and choose to where they spent that $70,000 a year, they would then be able to maybe find a way to enjoy their lives and maybe find more happiness. Just because you're making $70,000 a year, but if you have no time to enjoy that money, of course, that's why you'd probably have zero happiness, because you're continually working. I know, for example, not saying doctors make only 70,000, they make a heck of a lot more money than that. Good doctors and surgeons and whatnot. But again, if you're working 16, 18 hours a day, really, are you happy? Because you're not really able to enjoy your money. You're not able to enjoy your family. You may not be able to get away from the office because there's such a need for you, right? So in certain jobs, I think there is a way to potentially get saturated in your at your job, but sometimes I don't think it's the job itself. Sometimes it's just your mindset gets saturated, not the opportunity.
I think another way of saying it is that, yes, income may have a measurable effect on your happiness, but only to a point. I think that's really the best way of putting that.
I agree. Fair enough.
Cool.
Awesome, man. So why don't we do the outro?
Let's do it. So find us at usingyourpower.com. Leave a comment, leave a message, download our free audio course while you're there. And if you're on iTunes, Stitcher, or elsewhere, then leave a rating and review and help us spread the word about the show.
Absolutely. Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Have a great day.